So a lot of students going to university or college for the first time, they're looking to live on residence, and oftentimes in res, you have the option of picking a roommate, or you could ask the residents to pair you up with someone if you are going for a suite style or a double room style. So I think a lot of students kind of think about whether or not they want to live with a friend as a roommate, and is that a good idea? So here are some of my perspectives on this. So, of course, living away from home for the very first time in residence is a very nerve-wracking process. And, of course, trying to live with a friend is going to minimize those nervous jitters. And if you have a really good friend that's going to the same university as you, it can also be very appealing to live with them because first of all, you have a friend there with you on res as you go through orientation week and as you go through university together and having to transition. And also, it is also appealing to live with someone that you already know because you're likely be able to coordinate things a little bit better. You also know that you're going to have a friend to rely on in person as if need be. And the last thing, of course, living with a friend that you already know is very appealing because it just seems very fun. I think in residence, a selling point of why students want to go into residence isn't really about, the closest to the university or college. It's not about reducing commute time. It's really about that social life, that vibrant social life that a lot of students, want from living in residence in first year. It's about meeting new people. It's about partying. It's about just really having a lot of fun in res in general. So of course, having your best friend there as your roommate, for example, is going to be a huge perk. And from the perspective of a 16, 17-year-old, looking to see who you want to pair up with as roommates. Obviously, if you have a choice of living with your best friend, that may be the preferred choice for a lot of people. But there's definitely a few things you need to consider before actually saying yes or no to your good friend from high school on whether or not you wanted to be the roommate. So the one thing about living with someone in a dorm is that it's very different than just seeing them in passing through the hallways or taking the bus with them or being friends with them, because when you live with someone, that's when you actually get to really know the person. You get to know their habits and their quirks. And what happens in res a lot of times, and also when you move off campus in your upper years, is that a lot of people end up hating their roommate. And it's for one reason, and it's because their living habits don't match. And living habits isn't just about, someone being selfish and not, caring or being empathetic. Living habits, in general, people can be empathetic and can be very caring and giving, and, they're trying their best. But sometimes living habits just don't match. And some examples of this is, if your friend is a night owl and they've always been a night owl since, they were a kid, they don't sleep until 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, they prefer to do the work at night, and they like to have their lights on. But if you yourself, is an early bird and you like to sleep, by 9 every single night, you like to wake up at 5, then clearly this is going to be a mismatch of living habits. And depending on the style of dorm that you're going to pick, if you're going for more of the traditional rooms where, there's just one big room of 2 beds in it, then of course, you and your roommate are going to, start clashing very, very soon once you start living with them, because the lights are going to be turned on for them to study, but you're trying to sleep at, starting at 9. So this is a clear mismatch. But again, it really depends on the dorm style, right? So if you're in a more of a suite style where you're living in the same apartment, but each person has a different room, then you can still consider this friend to live with you as a roommate because, the other person turning on their lights at 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning isn't really going to impact you since you're going to be in different rooms. So, there's a lot of living habits considerations you need to think about. And of course, there's no clear-cut answer. And it really depends on the style that you're picking too, right? I think a lot of students kind of focus on how close it is to my class, or where my lecture is going to be in first year and how long or how far I have to walk or take the bus, for example. Or some might choose your res style based on dining hall styles, etc., etc. So there's a lot of considerations beyond just whether or not you want that roommate or not. But if you're considering, living with your best friend or a really good friend from high school, don't just look beyond, we want to live together, and which res do you want to pick, think about what your living habits are. Think about how you study. What time do you go to bed? Do you prefer loud music, or you prefer headphones, etc.? Also ask your friend these kind of questions to see and kind of assess whether or not it's going to be a mismatch of living habits, or do you think you guys are going to jive well. It is very nice for sure to be able to live with a friend that you already know in first year, especially is a huge transition period. It's a very scary time living away from home for the very first time. And there's definitely going to be a lot of perks, being able to see your friend every single day. You're going to have the access to a social network that you already have and trust and is supportive. So there are pros and cons to living with your friend, but of course, if you're considering choosing a best friend or a really good friend for your roommate in dorm, make sure you look beyond just whether your personalities match. Look into your living habits, because that is the one true reason why a lot of people end up disliking the roommate, or they end up switching the roommates if they're in upper year and they're renting off campus. And finally, if you do decide that, you have a really good friend going to the same university as you thought about living with them, but you don't think your living habits are going to match up, then you might want to consider another friend, or you might want to consider just, having someone brand new that you don't know and living with you. That's what I did in first year. Even my, a really good friend at the time was going to the same university as me. We had completely different dorm style preferences. We wanted to live on opposite end of the campus. So, of course, we weren't a good match for it, and we both ended up just filling out the res dorm questionnaire about our preferences and habits and our personalities, and we both got very good roommates in the end. So I think the university and colleges in general have been matching up people for a very long time. They have a very good process. Be honest in your personality survey, and hope for the best. I think in general, what I've seen is a lot of people don't know who their roommates are, and they meet them on campus for the very first time on when they move in on day one, and a lot of people hit it off. So don't be too afraid if you are considering going to dorm. Don't be too reluctant on having to pick a friend, because sometimes friends don't work out as roommates, and having someone brand new that you don't know is could be a good thing too.